invite Joe Henson to introduce the next presentation, which is around connecting and contributing, making a difference in our communities. Joe.
Ka pai, kia ora kanita. Can everybody hear me? Yep, bit of a thumbs up. Excellent. So continuing with our theme of community partnerships and engagement strategies, it really is kind of right that we finish the last session of the day around connecting and contributing and making a difference in our communities with a GP and our very valued and cherished lived experience team for Collaborative Aotearoa. But if you haven't had the pleasure of meeting Andrew Miller, he's a GP in Kamo in Whangarei. Kamo in Māori means eyelash, actually. But Kamo is also in reference to the hot springs in the area that are always bubbling up. And anybody that's had the opportunity to listen and to see Andrew Miller in action will really get this. He will always leave you with a weddle or a challenge or stir things up, actually, and they're always bubbling up for me when I have been in his presence. He definitely is an advocate, a stalwart, a friend, a rangatira, a matatau, and almost the te māngai pāho of Collaborative Aotearoa. And te māngai pāho is the Māori Broadcasting Funding Agency, just to give you a sense of, he really is the voice and face of Collaborative Aotearoa. He's a governance member, a council member, and we're so lucky to have him today. He's going to introduce our lived experience team and talk you through a little bit about what he wants to cover off in the next 45 minutes. So kia ora, Andrew. I hope that that introduction is no pressure. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Andrew Miller toko ingoa no ingarangi o ku tipuna. E te mai o ku tipuna ke Aotearoa e tau 1840, e tipu ake au ki te whanganui atara. E noho ana au ki Kamo, whangarei te rangaparo, ko tēnei taku mihi ki ngā tangata whenua o te tai tokorau. Ka mihi hoki au ki ngā tohu o te roine no reira ki tēnei koutou, tēnei koutou katoa. Thank you, Joe, for that introduction. I've, as Joe said, been involved with the Collaborative almost since day one. I'm a GP up in Whangarei. I've been there for the last probably 30 years. I have a sort of reasonably good idea of what continuity of care looks like. And in my job, it's all about relationships. I am going to talk to our lived experience partners from the Collaborative. And in doing so, we're going to talk about three things. With Karoria, I'm going to talk about well-being. With Whaamea, I'm going to talk about the importance of whakawhanaungatanga, and then with Gary, I'm going to talk about what it means to have self-management, ownership of information, and a treaty partner. I think in our Collaborative, the three people that you're going to be introduced to and meet are probably our most important governance members, and that they're the ones that keep us honest. They keep it real, they keep us focused. Quite often, I think we'll find that because we're living inside structures and organisations we've been involved with for a long time, we get into a mode of thinking that is and should be challenged by those with lived experience. It was very sobering to hear Barbara say that the experience of going to communities was harrowing. And I think that's what we will find. We're only in the middle of reforms at the moment because we're failing. I think the system's failing Māori, it's failing our communities, it's failing to hear the voice of what people are saying. And people want to tell us what they want to say, and we're not given the opportunity to. So I think with what we've heard today about collective impact and community-led development, we've got an amazing opportunity to actually get over ourselves and step up and actually listen respectfully and start having true partnership with the people that we're meant to be serving, and act like servants and not like people telling everyone how it should be done. So I think these guys that we're about to hear are a real strength in our Collaborative. They don't come from existing organisations. They haven't got a vested interest in the jobs that they might have during the day, and what they tell us is going to be good for them, good for us, and it's really what we should be doing. So I'm going to go through a little bit with each of them, and they can introduce themselves as their segment of this next 30 minutes or so starts up. So I was going to start off with Karoria to introduce herself, and then I'm going to pop up a wellbeing wheel, which I know she likes to talk about what wellbeing looks like for her. So Karoria, if you want to fire ahead and introduce yourself, that'd be awesome.
Ngā mihi, Andrew. Kia mihi, kia koutou katoa, ko ngā puinui tōne me te rau o ngā iwi, ko hoki anga tuku moana, kei kere tuku kainga i nānei, ko te whare tapu o ngā pū tuku tūranga waiwai, te he mauri ora, ko Karoria tuku ingama, kia ora. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this, because it seems to me that there are lots of hui that happen around the place where it's very systems driven, and the opportunity to contribute and be an equal partner at the table is such, it's a blessing. So thank you to the Collaborative and yourself, Andrew, for facilitating this.
Cool, thanks, Karoria. I'm just going to flip up that wellbeing wheel that we like talking about, because I think you often say if someone had approached you along your journey and said, you know, what matters to you, and not treated it as a medical consultation, life might have been a bit easier for you. So I'm just going to share this wheel. You guys might have all seen this, but it's just a simple approach to maybe about thinking about the other determinants of what being well is for people, and starting not just with our provider model, but actually getting to the heart of what matters, so that we can make sure that we're engaging properly and getting to the root of what people want to sort out. So I don't know, Karoria, if you just want to almost talk to this, and what an approach would look like to you that's good if you wanted to be looked after or cared for properly. Manakitanga.
So first of all, I think that tools like this are really, really important for setting up the tone of an interaction, because if, for example, you as a clinician were to base a conversation around this, rather than saying, well, you know, what's wrong with you, or what can I do for you, which kind of limits that context. What this does is it starts to create the relationship that we have, that develops a rapport where I trust you. And so therefore I'm much more willing to share what's going on around what I might have presented with as a physical condition, and how that might be addressed through taking care, or being at least aware of some of the other impacts that are happening around that. I think too often the interaction that we have in this example in the clinical space is dictated by the roles that we sit in, and not by the intent of what we're trying to do. And I think that this kind of approach, when you're potentially dealing with somebody, not necessarily just in a clinical setting, but it allows the kind of relationship building and trust building that creates that rapport, that trusted relationship that allows a further kōrero and exploration around it. That's my initial thought anyway.
It seems clear that quite often, unless we do approach those things, Karoria, in a way that shows engagement or true care, then you're going to feel that you're not being listened to, and very unlikely to resolve things, not simple things, but the things that actually matter to you. That'd be right, eh?
Absolutely. And the other thing is that I get to be a bit more self-determined in what wellbeing looks like for me, because for example, I might show up presenting with RSV, for example, but there is really not much point in addressing the RSV if I'm still living in my car because my house flooded and I don't have I've got nowhere to go, and I'm not being supported in any way that's meaningful for me to change the environment that I'm in that caused the issue in the first place. And I'm not saying that my GP could fix it, but having an awareness of that might help facilitate better support pathway for me. And I don't think that any clinician spends 10 years in medical school to, I think they do it because they
The one thing I'd be interested to hear is, I think some people won't approach this. I say, Karoria, are you okay? Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Yeah, just that some people don't like to approach this because they don't like to say they haven't got the answer for someone or the resource to do it. Do you think it's still the right approach to even be respectful enough to tell people that what matters to them really does matter, but they might not be able to help right on the spot. I think the question's not asked quite often because people don't want to get themselves into a pickle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that, again, it's that, referring back to the earlier presentations that we've had, it's been willing to sit in that uncomfortable place, because actually what is the most important thing that's going on for me right in that particular minute where I'm being invited into a relationship, I feel heard. Actually, essentially, everybody has what they need to within themselves. But just the fact that I'm heard, just the fact that I have a safe place, just the fact that I'm allowed to be held in that place without anybody trying to fix me, because I'm not broken. I'm just experiencing a challenge or an obstacle in that place. And just to be held and heard is more than, and if I were to receive that in a clinical intervention space, that's it. You're my health journey partner for life, because you're simply present, and that's probably the most important thing for me.
Yeah, thank you. It's manakitanga, it's caring. It's not delivering a service, but it's actually caring for somebody, which I think is the most important thing. So that's awesome, Karoria. We'll move through to Whaiamua, but at the end of it, we'll all have a chance to add whatever we think that want to add. Is that all right with you?
Kia ora, Andrew. Kei te pai. Kia ora.
I like your hair at the moment, by the way. It's awesome.
Flattery will get you everywhere, but you're like me, Andrew.
Whaiamua. Now, Whaiamua is next, and she is probably, one of the platforms and backbones of all the collaborative. I'd say that without any shadow of a doubt. Whaiamua, I think, is so often talks to us about whakawhanaungatanga and how important that is. I, as a GP, have spent 25 years with my patients, and so it's become something that is sort of ingrained in what I do. I just love to hear people's stories, where they come from, and make the links. And in Northern, that's not particularly difficult because we're a small community and we know each other well. But one thing I didn't know with Whaiamua, and what I'm going to ask you to do is tell me a little bit about what's gone on in her life recently, because I know she's moved back to her Turanga Waiwai, she's moved back to Katikati, back to her marae and to her people. And I'd like to hear a little bit from Whaiamua about what that means to you, why it's important, and why you've gone home, if that's all right with you, Whaiamua.
Ai, tēnā pai tēnā kia hau, engari te mea tuatahi. Kia koutou katoa e whakarongo ana ki te kōrero. Tēnā koutou, he mihi kia koutou katoa e whakarongo ana, mā takitaki hoki. Tēnā koe hoa, Andrew, mō rātou katoa, you don't or may not have met me before. Engari, te mea tuatahi, ko mata atua te waka, ko te awa nui a rangi te moana, ko maua o te maunga, ko te rere a te kahia te awa, ko ngai te rangi te iwi, ko ngai tamawhariu o te hapu, ko waio, he mokapuna o tamawhariua, no katikati, e noho ana au, I nai nei kei kona. 5 months ago, I moved home. Ki taku tūranga waiwai. My heart, my mind, and my wairua cried for 2 years to return home. You may have read stories, heard the books about the call of the land, the call of home. I would never have believed it if it had not happened to me. In the 5 months of being called home, hearing it and coming on the call, it's not an easy decision. Anyway, here I am at home 5 months later, having done mahi in Auckland with House Consumer Advisory Service, now known as Woven, and House Navigator, Consumer for House Care Homes, or Collaborative Aotearoa, and loving what I have done and learned. But did I know back then all this mahi that is happening around whakawhanaungatanga going home or returning home has helped me to put the substance behind what I already had. Did I know I had what I think everybody else sees in me? No. It is not until you speak. Very good for those that are listening. Even better for those that are watching, that actually see you in the mahi. This is the thing about whakawhanaungatanga. When we say that 19-letter word, do we know that it's more about the heart, coming from the heart to bring together the energies that will expend the mahi that you are looking at accomplishing or succeeding? This morning, wonderful, wonderful kōrero from everyone. And it makes my return to my tūranga waiwai more real now than it did before. You speak about building trust. When we are working with other people, it is growing rather than building. Everybody goes into the relationship knowing that they have a kaupapa. Is it here? Is it here? Or is it here? When your kaupapa and your kōrero come from your heart, the intention and even your words are different. I know that we need people who write up how the policies, what the information, what data we have to make right. I know that. But the whakawhanaungatanga and everything that gets done, if you can't do it on ground level, you will have trouble anywhere else. Having moved home to my tūranga waiwai and having lived away from home for 45 years, I had really forgotten what whakawhanaungatanga was. I had. I cried at family gatherings. You forget what true love is. You forget what doing things purely because you are theirs. You forget that love has no restrictions, that there is no agenda. So returning to taku nei tūranga waiwai, having lived in Auckland, in social housing, I did not realise how distant I had become with my whānau. At a distance in myself, I could see how that could present awkwardness, but also likening it to the mahi that we were doing in healthcare homes or Collaborative Aotearoa. I could see how being distant did not bring forth the communications and the movement that may have been necessary until I went home. 5 months I have been home. I'm so fully involved in Te Runanga Nui o Ngai Tamawhariua. I don't know how, but I am the chairman of our local marae. I am very much seen as the second eldest in our large whānau of 160. I am seen and heard. I hear all the time from our whānau how wonderful it is aroha mai. How wonderful it is that I have come home. It's funny that others will see in you those kind of skills that you don't always fully recognize in yourself. Tātou te iwi Māori, when we are going to get a job, we don't want to blow our own trumpets and say how neat we are at this or that or that. We want somebody else to do it. When I am home, our whānau will share different things to each other. Every time they came forth to me to say different things about how wonderful it feels to have me home, I feel like I want to fall on the ground and tell them I am the one that should be telling and sharing to the rest of our whānau the energy ki te papakainga, mo rātou ki te ahika, returning home to where you came from, to where your future will grow from. But also knowing that the people who have been living at home before I returned have kept that land and all the rest of the whānau and the community busy. They've been making those connections. So when I hear about the localities, kōrero that's been going on, what you need, what you do, how to be involved, it feels beautiful to know people are reaching out and wanting to connect and wanting to get over the thing they call awkwardness or disconnectedness. May I say, the word whakawhanaungatanga for me at this time of the pandemic and through the COVID response, it is a gentle friendship, all for well-being. It is, I don't want to push away what other people have said, but in the past I have heard and seen people say, we are not a partnership. We are not in a partnership. It's the intent within that will give you that. When you are going through the matrix that House Care Homes has put out for those clinics and clinicians to be using, please, each of our principles, the values that are in there, they're not just words to read. It's an action word that says, hey, I'm going to show my care. I am getting behind all these principles and I'm going to make it live. How can I work it? How can I tell the rest of the clinic? Don't tell them. They need to read it. But we need to role play it every day. If you are doing what you do when it comes to connecting, why is there awkwardness? I never, since I have been home, I could not imagine the way the whānau keep coming around. They want to support so much. When I hear things today for what we have been doing in my whānau and our whānau whenua, it's like a micro macro thing that's happening out there. What our whānau is doing is learning to be more self-sufficient. We are wanting to do our own marakai, growing and being self-sufficient at home. However, I am aware that this pandemic has shifted us, that's what we all, ki te ao, to the world, need to look at, bringing ourselves back into that and taking that control, because it's our worth, a man's worth, a woman's worth, about how we feel when we give trust. Trust is not something you give. You meet someone, yep, good day today. Oh, I'm going to trust them. You know, it takes a little bit more than that. When it comes to your whānau, orite te toto, you know that your blood and their blood are the same. There are no questions. There are no awkward feelings. When you are working with non-whānau or non-Māori, just like Jude and Whetūrangi work, to be able to find that platform or plateau that allows them to walk together, to share what comes. And my whānau make me feel like that. With the gratitude for the kupu whakawhanaungatanga, 19 letters, you take the middle 3 letters of that word and it tells you no, N-A-U. And that belongs to you. Every time you are in the clinic, know that that's your responsibility when you are applying the principles of whakawhanaungatanga. I have a love for my whānau, and especially for house care homes at this time, and the whole team, because the provision of a space or a platform like this to share with you what is whakawhanaungatanga and how should it happen when it's given from the heart and you own it, your gentle human kindness. It's not rocket science. It's not something on the medication box that you can't quite see. It lives within you. You are it. You are the trust. You are not building it. You're not trying to look for it. Oh, sorry, you are building it. But it lives within you. And it's the intent that you have. And every day, my whānau are a constant reminder to me that we are love. Without the intention of love to make things move and get done, I know it could be more an uphill battle than it is a shared one to get our whānau whenua in the way that we want to see it, just like you want to see the future. The visions I thought I had, I've heard everybody say and mention them, having consumer voices embedded in the model of care, having space like our lived experience people are sharing today, being in the room. I couldn't have imagined all of this. Kia koutou katoa e whakarongo ana mai ki te kōrero. I think that might be a bit long from me. Andrew, what do you reckon?
I just sit there mesmerised and get goosebumps. You usually give me goosebumps every time I hear you speak. I mean, that's exactly what I think we've been hearing. That's right from the heart and soul. I mean, in some ways you sort of talk about vested interest. You're so vested for the people that you surround you and love, and you're iwi hapu whānau, and it's honest, it's transparent. I mean, so listen to you, I wonder why we wouldn't want leaders like yourself. And I can see why you're the chair of the Maritas. No doubt, I can understand that. So that's absolutely awesome. I'll have a word with Gary, and then obviously the three you guys can come back. But thank you so much, Aroha mai whaia. That was incredible. He was going to say, "You give me goosebumps." Thanks so much. And the last person we're talking to is Gary Sutcliffe, who's another of our lived experience partners. Gary has often got a very strong interest in self-management and sort of ownership of information, and being able to manage and look after yourself. So Gary, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you think about that particular part of care, that would be awesome.
Yeah, kia ora Andrew, and kia ora whānau. He tangata o te Tiriti Aho, ko Pākehā toku iwi, ko Wallace Sutcliffe toku Matua Tupuna no Lancashire, ia ko Ellen Rimmer, toku whaia Tupuna, ko Bert Sutcliffe, toku Matua, ko Norma, toku Mama, ko Gary Sutcliffe, toku Ingoa, tangata Waiora. So tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So my name's Gary. I'm from Auckland. I'm married. I've got 2 children and 5 granddaughters. So that's me. So look, self-management. I guess I really only really heard the phrase self-management when I was working at Tamaki Health with Whai Merle, and I learned a lot about myself around self-management. The things that were most important about that is that I have a responsibility to make myself informed about, what my health and my needs are and how to express that. And something that Whaia just referred to was, that building of trust and the mutual trust, between yourself and your healthcare team or your doctor. It's really important. And I think we all know that the old traditional doctor-patient relationship is kind of like, I'm the doctor, you're the patient. If you do what I say, then you'll get better. So there is that, the obvious power dynamic or the imbalance of power with that, which does leave people, patients, us, disempowered, or that we kind of, as long as we comply, then maybe we'll be okay. Look, some of the things that and look, I've come across a number of good doctors as well, there's no question about it. And I think the more enlightened doctors, not necessarily just younger ones, but more enlightened ones that have that ability to connect with people, and find out really who they are and where they're from and who their whānau is, and then asking those questions about, look, what's on top for you at the moment, what is it that sort of brings you here, but in a way that's not just about a diagnosis or an illness, but it will include that. I don't know whether I've gone a bit off the track there, Andrew, but that's sort of, I know that the first responsibility is my own, but it's also a responsibility of a team of me and my GP to actually have a partnership. I can't honestly say that it feels like that yet, but I'm sure there are some people who are hooking in today that do have a genuine partnership relationship with their GP. Maybe it'll come in time, but suffice to say, whenever I come away from my GP appointments, that I know what it is that I have and what I have to do, and I make it my business to find more out. But there'll be a lot of people that won't do that, that won't know how to do that, and possibly leave the surgery after their 15 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is, really still shaking their head and saying, I really don't know, I just have to take these pills. Andrew.
Gary, what would you then, if you, in saying that, so for those people that might be walking out without what they might need, or for yourself saying that there's, things are moving but not quite there, what would be the things that that good would look like for you? If you had a wish list or a shopping list, what would it that you think we should be changing and how we're doing things to make that much easier for people?
I think a lot of that is to do with being prepared. I don't want to talk just about the time, the 15 minutes we have with the GP, but at the end of the day, that is our little window of opportunity to be able to express what it is that we really need. And a lot of that is in planning. Now, I know my parents' generation would never, ever have questioned their GP or got clarification. They'd just listen and then, take something away with them. But if we know in advance, I just say to people, and some of the learning I did through self-management was, write the things down before you go and see the doctor. Write the things down that you want to discuss with them, what answers you want, with the most important thing at the top. But if you don't feel confident about doing that, take somebody with you, because A, it's another set of ears, and they may be able to, if you find you can't do it, they could speak for you, if you're happy for them to do that. Look, an ideal situation is that my prime caregiver, my GP, knows who I am, understands who I am as a person, that I'm more than just the diagnoses that I may have had over the period of time. And, you know, we can actually just almost sort of not develop a friendship, but a sort of a relationship that really means something to me, and I look forward to continuing that sort of relationship. A bit garbled, Andrew, but I think maybe there's a message in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is. Thanks, Gary. I think that so one of the things that I'm interested in been working on, when I was at the consumer end of the health system, I had no access to any of my records, no patient portal, no shared care plan, wasn't ever offered an advanced care plan. My view is that that's all information we as consumers should have at our fingertips, and there's a team of people looking after us, not just within the practice, but within the wider community too. There's a lot of allied health providers, NGOs, money health providers. We should have a record that's accessible, owned by us and accessible to all, so that we actually own our information and people around us can help us when we wish to participate, if and when. And to a large degree, self-management, I think, too, is to avoid actually having to go and see anybody as a participant, to be able to look after yourself as much as you can with the help of your whānau and yourself, and then when you need some help, participate. But that's really, that's great, Gary. Thanks for that. What we're thinking of doing now is, I was going to give you a few, as Joe said, I might end up giving you a few challenges, but and then maybe open the floor a little bit. But what we've heard today is a whole lot of stuff around, I guess, from our lived experience partners, stuff that matters to them from other speakers around what partnership, especially with iwi and community, looks like. We spend a lot of time in the health sector doing reforms, writing documents, writing strategies, and we are only having reforms because, in my view, is failing to a degree, and we have to take some of that failure as our responsibility, particularly those who've been up for a while, because we're not moving things in the direction we need to be moving. I mean, I remember one of our collective impact experts was telling us that culture eats strategy. We can write as much strategy as we like, but the culture of what we do needs to change. We are thinking, Joe and I are thinking, that really what we should be doing maybe now is actually saying to you guys, this is a call for action. You can finish the Zoom meeting and actually go back to your job, or you can think, what am I going to do that's going to make a difference to our lived experience partners who've just spoken to you? And what's going to make a difference to our iwi partners, our communities, and the people we actually look after? So we're almost thinking, well, could you give us, maybe thinking about it, 3 actions you're going to commit to as of today, as of this afternoon, to take some responsibility, but also I think seize the opportunity. It's not very often we get an opportunity. There's a reform going on and there's a vacancy somewhat in direction. And if we are going to be able to lead, we need to lead from the community voice backwards through our organisations and actually get over ourselves to a degree, because we're getting in the way, I think, of change by wondering where we sit as organisations or we sit as providers, when that's entirely irrelevant. We're here to serve the people we are meant to be caring for. So I'd like you guys maybe to think about, just jot down 3 actions you're willing to commit to. It might be you might find actions difficult. You might go, oh, that's difficult. The next thing is maybe then think about what are the barriers or difficulties that are going to get in the way of this, how we could help each other to do that, or what you think could or should be done to make that easier. Certainly that's kind of the role of the collaborative, is that we're trying to set a framework up for collaborative impact, trying to work out a way of doing this that isn't just allowing incumbent organisations to decide what things will look like, because that will fail, but having a different view of things, taking an action, taking some responsibility and actually seizing the opportunity. So you want to take a minute or so just to do that? And Joe, do you think it would be worthwhile then just opening up the floor to anybody that's going to be willing to tell us what actions they're going to take and or what barriers they see, and let's just have a little bit of backwards and forwards. That sound all right?
Yep, I think that sounds perfect. I think people are well warmed up now to engage since about 9:15 this morning. So looking forward to giving people a minute to get their thoughts together around, just to reiterate, it must be the teacher in me. What's your call to action to improve your lived experience engagement and or iwi community-driven partnerships? And the other thing is, if you've got any barriers, what do you think those might be? Because there will be some people around the room who can help you with some of those solutions. Kia ora. So let's take 30 seconds more and then give you a moment, and then we're going to see with the number of people that we've got here if we can freeform this discussion, but I'm fairly confident we will be able to. Awesome. I'd just like to thank Judy for your comment in the chat around what precision-driven health is doing. And so once you put something out like that, you know everyone's going to contact you, right? Because we'd be really keen to understand a little bit more. I can see you laughing, but jokes aside, so thank you for that. We'd be really interested in hearing what, understanding the approach you're taking and the learnings and what you plan to do with that. Let's start up at the top of the head of the fish. And so let's start at the top, which is in the Wellington region. Anybody like to kickstart the conversation? What are you going to do? Or what are your barriers? So we'll start from the Wellington region, moving up to Whanganui. Anybody like to make any comments?
Kia ora koutou, ko Jean Te Ao Kiwi toku ingoa. I'm the Population Health Coordinator at Te Awa Kairangi Health Network, PHO, and Te Awa Kairangi in the Hutt Valley. And I haven't come up with 3 yet, but the first one I've come up with is to volunteer to do some mahi on the marakai that we have going on in our region. I feel like working with Māori food sovereignty and being able to support our community more with kai is going to be a real win for, for everyone. And on top of that, I've had some kōrero with some really cool guys over at Healthy Families in Hutt Valley, and so they're doing some amazing mahi on the maramataka and how we can explore that more with the way we live on a day-to-day basis and be more successful through using that. And so, yeah, I feel like I'd really love to engage more with our community at the Mara and build up those iwi partnerships in that way for myself and my team as well. So
yeah, I think that's awesome, Jonto. I think that what comes out of that is your authenticity, the individual gains that you'll get for you and your immediate whānau, but what Te Awa Kairangi will get out of that as well. And one of the things I think is exposure to not just you, but who you work for in the service itself. So Te Kupu Māori, rāranga, right, just sort of weaving all of that together, which is a little bit what Iri said, and just furthering some of the other themes we've heard today. Anybody else? Actually, I'm going to ditch the concept of going around the motu because it's quite a big motu too. So anybody else? Thank you. What are you going to do? What will be your barriers? Amajit.
Yep, I have got 3 here, and the first one being provide more of the opportunities to elevate whānau voice, providing the forums, number 2 is bring the whānau voice, the lived experience into our hui, as we're discussing services that we're creating for the health and well-being for whānau. So you know, having that korero from the outset, and work with partners who are good at this, because, you know, the engagement can be difficult. So working with partners. So those are three things that we're looking at as we support our network. In terms of barriers, I actually think funding is a barrier. That upfront investment in terms of engaging is often overlooked and not given it enough time. But that is something that we're trying to influence from the outset.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on that funding part and explore the concept of, Megan said something that I wrote down, and that was to learn your way out of it and not spend your way out of it, which is very different to giving koha or funding to lived experience people to participate, right? So I sort of think many of us will say we've spent thousands of dollars on contractors and no money on the people that really matter. That's a really good, so it's actually shifting where the funding goes in my mind. Anybody else? Good.
Kia ora whānau.
Yes, I could see you ready to go.
Raring to go. I've been bursting this whole couple of hours.
Awesome.
Ai kia ora, ko Tash wharerawa hau no te mā hore hau. I'm coming to you from the beautiful Kaikohe today. I mahi for kia ora. I mahi for Ngāti Hine Health Trust as kaipāriki for Poipoi a te Mokopuna, as well as with Women's Health Action. I'm a kaitiaki mō Wahine Ora, so a consumer rep for Wahine Voice. And in this year, it's not just this year, I mihi to you, Whaimil. Thank you for that. What a beautiful, beautiful ngākau. He ngākau mahaki. Thank you for your kōrero today. It really does put it back to us. This is for us up here, this is a kia ora, because we can't do hariru anymore, and this is our tēnā koe. So I want to mihi to you and thank you for your kōrero around whakawhanaunga, and how important that is actually for everybody here. Even though we might think we know it, there's always an extra element that we learn. So thank you very much for your kōrero today. So yes, I am with Women's Health Action and Ngāti Hine Health Trust, and my situation is that with Ngāti Hine, I'm able to access whānau and to work with especially our mamas and our pepe through like the teen parent unit as well as hapu wānanga. And then what they tell us in the wānanga is where we take their voice onto another platform or onto another level. So there's national platform boards that I'm on as well, like for breastfeeding, for cervical screening, for abnormal uterine bleeding. I'm not quite sure how I got on that one, but what I'm saying is whānau voice is important for what they tell us, that I can take back and relay their voice. But actually, my kōrero for actions is not just me taking their voice, it's me bringing them to those tables as well, so they can speak for themselves. But the barrier is not to like drop them there and then they don't understand how to navigate perhaps those tables or those kōrero, but so to awhi them in those positions as well, so that they should be part of the co-design of everything to do with their well-being wheel. So that's our barrier and our wero. And mahi toi is the other way. So about looking at the richness of our whānau and what might be their strengths, their momo. Maybe it's carving, maybe it's weaving, maybe it's kapahaka, and using those things in their own well-being as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tash. I really appreciate that. I've always worked on this mantra, their story, their story, their story, their story, and not ours to tell. And I think that is what Whaimil, Karoria and Gary do for us, and you can see that Andrew's trying to elevate that. The wero is to everyone, how will you bring lived experience in its authenticity to life in your organisations in design, development, implementation, governance and beyond. And if we are going to subscribe to this this system of care, this model of care and true locality planning, then sitting at the heart of that is whānau, whānau, whānau. And we won't get the transformations that we want. We won't see the differences that we expect to see because we didn't do things differently. And I think one of those is lived experience, consumer voice, whānau engagement. So thank you for that, Tat. I'm very mindful of your time. Very, very mindful. I just want to have a look around. I don't see anybody waving their hands. So I just want to take it back to Andrew because it is actually part of, he's sort of got us started on this, and just maybe some final comments and then back to Amarjit. But I'm just looking around the room now and I can't see anybody jumping up at me. So if that's okay, we're going to do that. Andrew.
Kia ora, Joe. I think it's obviously quite difficult when there's so many people on the Zoom for people to put their hands up and speak. And I imagine that most people will, have been listening to today and realising there is actions they can take immediately. And you can see this is really positive. I just think this is really optimistic and positive. We're in a space now of opportunity, and we should be grabbing it. And I think we just need to stay sort of pure and transparent and honest with what we do, so that when we are approaching conversations, we're not trying to defend our own current position or our own current organisations, but realising we probably need to flip the paradigm upside down and start with our lived experience, consumers and the people we're serving, and then work our way back what looks good to them. I think that's going to make us as providers our job easier. We're going to feel much more likely that we're going to succeed, that we're caring for people, and what's good for the people we look after is good for us. And one day I'm sure we're all going to end up on the receiving end of a system, and if you want that to look good for you then, we should try to make it look good now. And there's nothing stopping us doing it now. The moment we hang up now, we can get on and start doing stuff. So and say you stayed on this for the last few hours because this is something that you guys are interested in and wanting to do, and there's nothing's going to get in your way apart from sometimes, I guess, a bit of imagination or just holding the line. And no one's going to argue with you if you say that self-determined, transparent, equitable well-being is what you want to do. If they want to argue that, they need to find another job. So kia kaha, I think just go for it. Just do whatever feels right in your heart. As Bar Mill said, it's your heart and soul, and you're all really strong and you can get things done. So foot to the pedal, I reckon. Thanks, Joe.
Kia ora, thank you. And thank you, Amarjit. I will leave closing remarks and debrief to you. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi nui to all of our presenters and to our audience. You'll all be wanting lunch, but we do want to just grab those gems from the rich korero. So I'd like to ask Karoria Johns to share those takeouts with us before I then share some next steps and how you can receive the recordings, etc. So Karoria, over to you.
Oh, kia ora, Amarjit. Look, there is just so much in in what was shared today. Everything from how we might address the processes and systems through back to the core of what we do, which is that heart stuff. We have that feeling around what we do, and leading with that and allowing that to inform, as opposed to trying to fit that into something else, is probably the biggest overall thing. The other, and looking, because there's so much to capture. Honestly, I've got a whole presentation in itself just on bullet points of amazingness that have come out of today. I think probably the one thing that I would like to invite as a takeaway in a nutshell is that you're the micro of the macro. It starts with you. And as much as, like I'm all about the vision of a self-determined health system that's whānau-led and all of those wonderful aspirations, probably not going to happen while I'm still alive to see it, right? We're working toward that. But what I will invite is that the next interaction you have, whether it's staff, whether it's whānau, whether it's a patient or someone who just needs an awhi, that's the gift you give today. Celebrate those successes, take those wins, recognise them for what they are, because success breeds success. You are the micro of the macro. Your personal responsibility becomes a ripple that is felt throughout the world. So please just start with now, here now, because you are enough to make the change happen. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Claudia. Some good insights there. I just want to take a minute to share some next steps. So first of all, we will email the slides and the recordings as soon as we can. As you know, we're 2 team members down, and our website details will be on our final slide today. And I'd also like to announce our Kanohi Kita Kanohi Symposium for later in the year, because I've really felt that today was difficult to capture the two-way dialogue, and we do want more of that, and probably a lot of you are boosted to share, and we want to hear it and we want to listen. So I definitely take that on board, and we hope to be in person later in the year. And I also want to thank the team, especially those that are here today supporting, but also Kirsten and Michael behind the scenes. Even though they're not here today, they did a whole lot of mahi to bring this to the forefront. And so it's that whole, shared approach that we have. So I just want to make it to them as they recover. So yes, thank you everybody for joining today. Go well. I will be asking the beautiful fire mill to close us. Stay safe, and ngā mihi.
Tēnā koe Majid, kia koutou katoa e noho mai nei, anei tētahi atu. Aroha mai, everyone. I just need to ask Amajid a question. Amajid, is this closing for lunch or because we are finished?
We finished fire mill. This is closing.
Aroha mai tātou katoa, I'm back again. Tētai atu mihi kia koutou ngā kai kōrero e kōrero ana kia mātou. Kare kia mātou ki te kanohi, ki te ngākau. Thank you to all those speakers. Your words hit my heart, my head. So, karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, kei rungi a tātou katoa, mo tēnei te māramatanga o te kōrero, kei roto i te wāhi hauora, kei rungi a tātou, hei mahi, e mihi kia koutou katoa, kei rungi te ingoa tapu a ihu karaiti, a ke tonu a ke āmene. Ka pai koutou katoa ki te kiti aia, koutou tēnā koe a Majid, ko mātou tīma, ko koutou te kai kōrero e whakarongo ana hoki. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Ngā mihi.
Mauri ora.